get started. I will do a quick just housekeeping. We're open to taking questions throughout the webinar. So if you have anything that comes up, you are welcome to drop it in the chat or in the Q&A panel, and we'll most likely answer them at the end, but Bobby may end up answering your question throughout. So go ahead and get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Bree. Hey, everybody. My name is Bobby Tichy. I lead our solutions team here at Stitch. Stitch is a Braze and MarTech consultancy, and we are doing a follow-up session from our presentation at Forge, which we did with Troy, who's on with us as well, who is the senior manager of CRM data and solutions at Taco Bell. And so today, what we wanted to focus on was walking through how Taco Bell and Whataburger have changed their campaign process through AI and automation. And so there will be three key things that will key areas of focus today. Number one will be AI automation in the campaign process, how Whataburger and Taco Bell are using AI and automation, and what an agentic workflow and AI agents look like. And I think that one thing that's really important that we'll go throughout this time, and what we'd love to have your questions on as well, is what's the key differences between AI, automation, as well as agentic workflows. And so before we jump in too far and kind of jump into first the Whataburger piece before we jump into Taco Bell, Troy, I'd love for you to just do a quick introduction of yourself, and then we'll jump in from there.
Yeah, hi everyone. Troy Vo, as Bobby mentioned, Senior Manager, Customer Data and Solutions at Taco Bell. I lead the marketing automation, technology solutions. Been with Taco Bell almost 5 years, technology background, and been working with Stitch for at least a year and a half. So we love the Stitch team and we appreciate them. And I think this is a very awesome AI workflow that Bobby will share with you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Troy. So to start, at Stitch, we have this hypothesis that in the next 3 to 5 years, AI and automation will really heavily take over the campaign process, specifically the repetitive and kind of copy paste things that we're used to today. And we think that a platform like Braze, and for those of you who have been are already Braze customers or evaluating Braze, you may have seen over the last couple of weeks of just how quickly they are innovating and adding on to their platform to be as open and flexible as possible. Most recently, building out same-day integrations with the new ChatGPT browser, Atlas, as well as building a integration within ChatGPT so you can leverage things like content cards or in-app messages within a prompt within ChatGPT. And so we think the combination of Braze, AI, and automation is really where all of these things are to come together and help marketers do things a lot faster and a lot more efficient. And the reason why we think that is because obviously the advancements in AI, but AI has really opened the door for automation as well. And we really believe that humans should focus on anything that provides creativity or innovation. The repetitive tasks, the swivel chairing between platforms, the copy and pasting, we really think will go away in the next couple of years. So before we jump in and kind of walk through these agentic workflows and these agents, what we first want to do is just kind of ground ourselves in number one, understanding AI and automation, but then also a quick vocabulary foundation for things that we'll be talking about today. So first is that AI over the last couple of years has really opened the eyes to automation in a way that automation's been around for a very long time. Platforms like Workato or MuleSoft or Fivetran have all had these kind of automation elements to them, and or workflow automation elements to them. And what's been really interesting is that AI has like completely blown up automation in a great way, where automation is really now at the forefront of a lot of marketers' minds. But there are very, very different things. And what you're seeing on this slide is the kind of the main elements between automation and AI. The way you can think about automation is we're telling it exactly what to do, and it's executing those things based on specific actions we give it. AI, on the other hand, is much different because AI can actually perform tasks on its own. And that's what we'll walk through today with Whataburger and Taco Bell, or these agentic workflows could do a combination of automation and AI where it's doing what we're telling it to do, but it's also making some assumptions and actions on its own as well. So, Troy, before we jump into kind of the quick vocabulary lesson, what are a couple of ways that Yum and Taco Bell use AI today?
Sure, happy to share. At Yum, I would say three categories. We have Bite at Yum, which is a proprietary AI platform that powers our restaurant operations and guest experience across all the brands. We use it to streamline our ordering, labor forecasting, and our menu, managing the menu. We also have Voice AI, which are at the drive-throughs, powering ordering drive-throughs, helps speeds up service, improves accuracy. And then we've also started working with OfferFit, which is now Braze AI Decision Studio. So OfferFit is AI decisioning that helps us select the right messages at the right time to the customer in near real time.
Yeah, I like the acronym now of BAIDS for Braze AI Decisioning for
Yeah.
short. So that's great. So a quick vocabulary foundation for us to make sure that we're all talking and thinking about the same things as we think about the rest of this presentation, the agents that we'll walk through. So first, automation, we've already talked through, something that is executing, something that's predefined, something exactly what we give it, it's doing. Next is AI, where it's doing things that are able to kind of reason and make assumptions on its own. And we'll walk through a couple of examples of that with each of the agents that we'll walk through. Agentic workflows, combination of those two things, and AI agents are specific elements that are taking actions on their own. So you all have probably interacted at least with one AI agent recently, whether it's a virtual assistant when you're booking a hotel room or you're making a flight change with Delta. All of those different things could be considered AI agents because it's taking an action on its own. It's not predetermined and it's not relying on a human to make a decision before it ultimately makes that decision. So as we think about AI and automation within the campaign process, almost every single aspect of the campaign process could be enhanced or automated through AI and automation. It's everywhere, as you can see here on the yellow elements and the pink elements, each outline an element of automation or AI that could be attributed or make a piece of the campaign process better. And some of those are Braze elements. Some of those are elements of automation within Braze, but also how LLMs could help that with whether that's Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude, whichever LLM you use, as well as a couple of different workflow automation platforms like N8N and now Braze coming out with Agent Console as well. We'll be able to do that too. So before we jump in specifically into the Whataburger and Taco Bell use cases, Troy, would love to hear your perspective on, since you all are using OfferFit and some of the Braze AI capabilities, how has working with those things helped you all at Taco Bell?
Yeah, I would say Office is definitely an exciting new, I wouldn't say new anymore. We're using it about a year now. It's definitely a functionality that we use for reinforcement learning, to scale our testing much quicker. Off of it uses the multi-arm bandit approach, so it balances exploration with exploitation. So it tries new offers, captures positive reinforcement, and then serve the best performing offers based on what it sees. The system's in near real time, so it creates a pretty positive impact for our customers and guests. And it just does parts a lot of smarter personalization at scale. So I think that's the improvement that we're seeing. We're able to test, find results much quicker at scale compared to normal A/B testing.
I think that's where what we're trying to do, whether it's through these agents that we'll talk about today or through Braze AI decisioning, or just even workflow automation within Braze, is what we're really passionate about. What we're trying to do is figure out how can we leverage Braze and technology and AI and automation to make the marketers' lives easier, but also more effective. So that example of not having to do manual A/B tests, for example, and being able to do dozens and hundreds of permutations on those things without having to manually do it is really exciting and really impactful. So and we kind of saw through the campaign process and where we can leverage AI and automation throughout those different things. The other key element we wanted to think through as we talked through this process with Whataburger and Taco Bell was where in their process could AI and automation help? And where could an agent make a process either more efficient or more effective. And the other part of this too is it doesn't make sense, right? Just because we could build an agent or could build automation for a particular part of the campaign process doesn't mean that we should. And the reason for that is because these things, as my dad used to say when I was growing up, nothing happens magically or for free. And that's the same thing here within these processes, right? Building an agent, building an automation does not necessarily have an effective ROI attached to it. These things take time, they take money. A lot of times they take cross-functional teams. So it doesn't always make sense to build them out for every single piece of the process. So what we did was we went through each Whataburger and Taco Bell's full end-to-end campaign process. We identified where an agent or automation could help in that process. And then we went through the proper approvals internally, as I'm sure many of you on the call have experienced. There's always going to be an approval process, or maybe there's even an AI task force or team internally that's reviewing these things. Went through that with both teams. And then we ultimately went through this process of building and or designing and then building these agents. So identify, discover, solution, build, test, deploy. And then today, which is these things are live and we're constantly optimizing them week over week and month over month to make sure that we're constantly adding new functionality to make them even better. So let's dive in. First, let's jump into the Whataburger composition agent. And like I mentioned, the first thing that we did was go through their end-to-end campaign process. So you can see here all the tasks on the left-hand side, and then the time it took in the pink bars to the right. And you can see with all the different cross-functional teams that were required for each of these campaign processes on the bottom right there, as well as where the Stitch team, serving as an extension of the Whataburger team, is helping as well. So what we did is we went through every single one of these activities and identified, and you'll see that in purple and orange, where AI or automation could help make this process either more efficient, so it got done faster, or more effective, it could actually be done better. And so the exciting part about this is number one, identifying where it could be used, which is just about everywhere, but also where it makes sense to do that. Like I said earlier, it doesn't always make sense to create an agent or automation because building an agent for a particular activity may take a ton of time and a ton of effort and a ton of money, which we wouldn't get that ROI back. It doesn't save us enough time, for example, or it doesn't make the process that much better. So to give a primary example, we went through the campaign and offer ideation, that first row at the top. Like, would this be a good example of building an agent or automation? And we determined this was not. And the reason being was we wanted to really figure out like where will automation create the biggest lift without compromising any kind of creativity or judgment. That campaign and offer ideation is where the human side of marketing really thrives within Whataburger. So looking at that particular activity didn't make a whole lot of sense to do that. There's so much brand voice and creative direction. There's financial approvals. They have an offer engine that they use. All these different things are really important to that process. Another one that we looked at was prioritization. Again, this was not something that it was not a huge pain point for Whataburger. So when we mapped out this entire process, what really stood out was just how much time and energy was being lost in the composition stage of this campaign process. So taking assets from Figma, copying text from briefs, building templates in Braze, making sure everything was formatted correctly. It was incredibly repetitive manual work, but it's also very critical to building out these campaigns. It's required, right? But it by leveraging this and deciding ultimately on a composition agent, it tackled the single biggest bottleneck that Whataburger had, but also that the Stitch team had as part of this. So the reasons why we chose this composition agent, because at the end of the day, we realized this was the largest amount of time it took for the Whataburger team or the Stitch team working with the Whataburger team to complete a campaign, typically around 4 hours per campaign. And there was multiple pieces of technology that were involved. So manual emails, ClickUp as a project and campaign management tool, Figma for designs, Braze for actual configuration of those elements as well. So how does the composition agent work? At a very high level, the outline for this composition agent is it creates multiple tasks actually in ClickUp from the creative brief. It takes the build process from ClickUp, identifies everything that needs to be built, and then analyzes and creates those assets from Figma So the creative team is building all their assets, whether it's an email, an app message, gamification, whatever it might be. All that lives in Figma. And then it creates all of that content from Figma into HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then configures the actual campaign, all the elements inside of Braze. So let's quickly look at the before of this process before we jump into the after. So first is looking at this process of everything is manual. So this is a sped up version of a video that will loop through. But today, everything is manual for us and the Whataburger team in building out these processes. So you're having to manually create tasks in ClickUp based on a creative brief that's provided from the Whataburger team. We use ClickUp to access the Figma file. So you're going in and clicking a link within ClickUp to access the Figma file. You're manually analyzing Figma. And for those of you who use Figma, you know that could be a pretty big effort because there could be multiple campaigns, multiple versions. Sometimes creative teams do all of their creative for a quarter and sometimes even a year in just one Figma file. So it can be difficult to decipher what actually is being leveraged for that particular campaign. Then you've got to manually extract that asset from Figma to the desktop. From there, you're actually going through the process of manually creating that in Braze. So from there, what you're doing is just like you all would normally do, you're configuring the campaign, you're selecting the email template, you're creating the content in the template. And then once you're actually in that template itself, you're actually going back and then doing all of the elements that we all do every day, but it's a very manual process to do so, which is uploading the image, adding it to the template, adding alt text, adding a URL. So again, all these very manual processes that we have today. And then from there is previewing and testing this process. So as you can probably imagine, you're seeing a manual trend here, right? Every aspect of this process is completely manual. So from there, we go to the after. And now with an agentic workflow and agents, this is where it gets really fun. So the first step of this process is actually creating all of the elements inside of ClickUp automatically through workflow automation. So we're taking the creative brief, which is either a Word doc or a Google Doc, and we're analyzing that doc. We're creating all of the tasks that need to be done inside of ClickUp through the API. So from there, once all of those tasks are there, to actually build the email or in-app message or whatever assets we need, it all just starts with a button. So you'll see that button in the middle of the screen there. It just says build from Figma. So what's happening there is that our agent is analyzing that task in ClickUp along with the campaign brief to identify the Figma file that we need to go to pull the assets from to create. From there, the agent identifies all the assets within Figma. And again, this is a really big deal. And as we were going through it the first time, actually, the first couple times that we pulled the payload back from Figma, it actually crashed our server that we were using to build the agent. Because for those of you familiar with Figma, know that the API is very robust. It is a phenomenal API. It has every aspect of a Figma file that you could pull down. But what was really cool about it was we were able to then decipher what exactly we needed from Figma in the version and which actual piece of content we need to pull down. So once we pull that down, then our agent translates those assets into HTML and CSS, and then builds the components in Braze through the API. From there, what happens is the process goes through a update to ClickUp. So once that is completed, the whole Braze build, a comment comes back into that same task in ClickUp where we initiated the agent, and it tells us that the agent is done and that the configuration is complete and it's ready for review. And so that's when you would go in and manually take a look, make sure Braze configured or the agent configured everything correctly. The other cool thing too is you can review all of the data within a catalog because that's what's powering every single one of these campaigns. So let's walk through the agent itself. So what does an agentic workflow look like, right? So we just walked through kind of what it looks like from the front end, but what does the agent actually look like behind the scenes? And this is a high level overview, and we'll dive into each one of these different elements. But this workflow is configured and maintained in a platform called N8N. So it's just the letter N, the number 8, and then the letter N. And this is what we found to be so far the best platform to create these agentic workflows. Because number one, it can live on any cloud platform. So for example, if we first build one of these agents in our Azure instance, we can then migrate it to a Databricks or Redshift instance or Google Cloud Platform later on. So as we're migrating things, as companies migrate from different cloud platforms or different providers, they can move them from place to place. Also, the integration mechanisms to build out things like MCP servers are really strong within N8N. So there's 3 key workflows to this agent. Number one is analyzing the brief and identifying the Figma assets. It's then extracting those assets from Figma and converting them into HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and it's configuring those things in Braze. So let's dive into each one of these workflows a little bit deeper. So step one here, that top row of the workflow we just saw, is identifying and extracting the creative from Figma. And there's multiple individual agents here along with MCP servers. And that's really the heroes of this workflow. Because what these agents allow us to do is to make API calls or make decisions on certain things that make the manual process of these workflows completely go away. And the MCP servers are the way that we're able to interact with these platforms back and forth. So many of you may be familiar with an API. What's nice about an API is it gives you access to things, but it's only a one way, right? When I make an API call, I'm just expecting a response with a particular piece of data or an asset or something like that. MCP servers are bi-directional. So I could make a call to an MCP server and essentially have a conversation with that platform that I'm accessing, like Figma or even Braze. And so you can do a lot more with it. It's a lot more advanced version of an API. So the first half of this workflow is identifying all the assets within Figma, and more importantly, identifying the assets that are specific to that particular campaign. Because like I mentioned earlier, you could have multiple campaigns within one Figma file. The second half is validating the images. So like I mentioned, there's multiple layers in a Figma file. We only want the images that are related to that campaign. And so that's how we're determining which images and which assets we need to pull down. Step 2 is converting the Figma files to HTML. So we found that Anthropic or Claude is the best LLM for doing any kind of HTML and CSS development. We also built our own Figma MCP server. Figma has their own MCP server, but we built our own primarily because we only wanted to make sure we were looking at the assets that were specific to the campaign process. We didn't need to pull down things for like paid media or direct mail. So we wanted to kind of pare down that MCP server. And then step 3 is building the content in Braze on the right-hand side. And some of you who are familiar with Braze and really kind of in the weeds of the Braze API might be thinking, well, there's no image API inside of Braze, so I can't upload images through the API, and I couldn't really do that in a workflow automation. Well, this is what's really cool about a function and feature called Puppeteer. Puppeteer essentially mimics human interaction in any way that we want to. So what we're doing within this Puppeteer agent is we're actually logging in to Whataburger's instance of Braze, and then we are uploading that image that we've gotten from Figma through that Puppeteer process. So that way we don't have any manual steps as part of this workflow. So that was a lot of deep technical elements and kind of how agents flow. But today, kind of the biggest impacts for Whataburger are the saved hours per campaign. We talked about 4 hours per campaign. On average, Whataburger sends at least 6 campaigns per week. So that's 25 hours a week right there, just in saved time and money, either internally or money that they're having to spend with Stitch. And what's really cool about this, as you all are probably thinking through, is normally you'd need 10 plus people to go through this campaign process: creative, CRM, legal, brand, QA. Each step has its handoffs, meetings, and reviews. And I'm sure you all have gone through a process of a campaign being delayed because one approval was missed, or you had to stay up late because QA found an error at the last minute. With this composition agent, we're basically imagining a world and being able to execute on this where we brief our AI agent at 9 a.m. and a couple of minutes later, we have a fully built campaign inside of Braze that we're ready to launch in hours instead of weeks. And so it really allows the Whataburger team to focus more on creative strategy, listening to their customers, and innovating with their partners as well. Let's jump into the QA agent and Taco Bell. So Troy, I know you shared a little bit about your background already, but I think it'd be great if you just shared a little bit more about how you got to Taco Bell and kind of how your career ended up where it is today.
Yeah, as I mentioned, my background's always been technology. I like to define it between the intersection of technology and strategy. So I'm a solution architect at Taco Bell. I lead a team of solution architects. When I joined Taco Bell was back in 2020, middle 2020, so that was during the COVID days. And then we also launched our loyalty program there. So a lot of stuff has changed ever since. We also launched our SMS marketing program, working with Stitch for a lot of in-app gamification projects. So a lot of exciting things happening there. Um, as Bobby mentioned earlier, I think there should be a distinction between AI and automation. I think that's how we also view it as well. I think with automation for us is about efficiency. There's certain rules that we know that repeats and we can automate and schedule in advance. Whereas for us, AI is more about intelligent adaptation, using algorithms, predictive. Um, we also like to view both of them as working together, complementary. So automation, like again, creates consistency, while AI helps us uncover insights, make better decisions, personalize. Um, and then, yeah, the agent, the QA that Bobby will share today will hopefully share how we are scaling our process and making it more efficient for the team.
Awesome. So let's jump into it. Like we walked through with Whataburger, we have the campaign process today. Troy, if you wouldn't mind walking us through this end-to-end campaign process, the high level for each row, don't need to get too detailed into it, but walk us through this and what your current process or your previous process was before the QA agent.
So our process is there's a lot of steps, as you can see, very time consuming, a lot of manual work prior to all these automation process we put in place. But I'm sure like similar brands, we have a brand strategy, brand calendar experience that we ladder up to. So there's a lot of ideation and planning. Then after that, there's briefing, and then we submit our team submit tickets to us. We use Jira today for requirements and all the details. And then there's offer and content development. I'm skipping ahead a little, obviously, and run a little quick. Then we build our segmentation, configure the canvas, templates, and Braze. The key part next is the QA and proofing, which takes a lot of time. So I think we identified that's a big area for improvement. And then final scheduling and launch. So once the team, and after that, we monitor performance and provide feedback and the reporting. So pretty quick run through that process.
Yeah, so as we went through that together, we again identified where AI or automation could help the most in these processes. And you can see there's kind of two main areas where the bulk of the time is taking. One is around QA, and then the other is around content block and build. And kind of what we walked through with the Whataburger scenario, we know that agents and automation are not always a great fit because it does take time and effort to do these things. Troy, what was it about like building content blocks that was not a good use case or candidate for building an agent or automation?
Uh, it was something that we feel like we can role based and we can support pretty quickly. It's not something that we need to put an agent at this time. I think there's more areas where we can focus on our resources to put the agent against.
Yeah. Well, I think too, the way that you all have architected your um, content blocks is highly modular. So, like relying a lot on liquid logic and message extras to drive a lot of those things. So that way you're not beholden to more of a manual process in that particular element, even though it takes some time. There's a lot of version and personalization there. But that's really kind of the point, right? Is we all know AI and automation are not going to take over everything. It's really important to map out this process and prioritize where it makes sense to launch these different things. And and that's how we landed on the winner, which is the QA agent. And the QA agent took a lot of time, a lot of effort, at least 2 hours for every single campaign. Troy, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more about why we ultimately chose the QA agent and why we thought it would be most beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned earlier the QA process is kind of tedious for us. We would spend a lot of time reviewing, scheduling campaigns. Team would manual check everything, take hours. We also pivot a lot here at Taco Bell, so there's a lot of last minute changes that we have to support. Just helps us move much quicker. It wasn't sustainable, the current process we were doing. So we definitely reach out to Stitch team to say, hey, how can we leverage technology with all the AI agents these days to help improve our process? So it was definitely makes perfect sense.
So the outline of this QA agent at a high level, number one is it executes over 200 test scripts in less than a minute. And how it does that is this high level outline, which we'll dive into here in just a moment. But you can think about each of these tasks as essentially different types of agents or workflows. And we've kind of highlighted those in the way that we kind of have roles here at Stitch. So one is a technical producer. A technical producer is a message development savant, right? They HTML, CSS, Liquid, connected content, all those things are what they do all day, every day. And so we have a technical producer agent. Then we also have a solution architect agent, which is actually going through all of the elements inside of Braze to make sure everything was configured correctly based on the campaign brief itself. So what we're also highlighting here is that there are multiple failure points, right? Just going through a list of test scripts is helpful, but what's even more helpful than that is identifying where something has failed and then the specific reasons why it failed. So that way someone can quickly go back in and make the adjustments needed to, and then run the agent again to make sure they've corrected it. So let's jump into the before process, a quick review and just a highlight too of like how manual this process is. So again, this is a very highly sped up video, but the Taco Bell team was spending over 2 hours for each of those campaigns. And it's a constant like back and forth, right, between this test document and Braze to look at the test script, go back into Braze, identify what those things are. Troy, what's the biggest pain point of this manual QA process?
I'd say there's three major pain points. Uh, as you mentioned, a lot of manual work. Team has to do a lot of manual work. There's checking. We use different tools to check against Google Sheets, against Jira, and then just reviewing all the scripts, like you mentioned earlier, with the dynamic content and Liquid. That was one of the big pain points. Second one is like slow and repetitive, right? For us, like we want to make sure we move quicker, be able to support the team and the business as we scale. And then late night pressure. I'm the biggest culprit of it with my team. A lot of times we have to stay late, put in extra hours. I definitely want to give my team the space, work-life balance, everything else. So the more that we can remove a lot of the repetitive manual work is what we're looking for.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, like especially for you all at Taco Bell, like those like last minute changes or trying to get a campaign out that is relevant to something that might be happening in like just what's going on in the world or in pop culture or all those things of like why we want to get campaigns out faster. The the kind of the time lapse here that we're walking through is highlighting additional elements of that campaign process. The other element that we wanted to highlight was what does this look like now with the new QA agent? So let's jump into kind of again, this kind of sped up videos first, and then we'll walk through the actual automation and workflow itself in detail. So first, the agent is kicked off through a test email. So what that ultimately looks like is a test email sent from Braze, and then it goes to this agent, and that kicks off the entire process. And that agent cycles through every single test script that is on that test document. And right now, there's over 200 different tasks on that document. But what's really cool is that we're able to take whatever that test document is and update it in real time. So maybe Troy and team have identified 5 different things that today were different from yesterday that we need to change. All they have to do is update that test document. The agent just reads from that document. In addition to that, too, there's kind of 2 main elements of the after or the QA, I should say, for rendering and configuration. So it's looking at different things like on the rendering side, it's not just looking at was this campaign built correctly? If it's an email, for example, it's looking at is this email accessible and ADA compliant? Is it going to look good in dark mode and light mode? What is it going to look like for mobile and desktop as well? In addition to that, the configuration side was this campaign actually built to the specifications of the original brief? So for example, if this is a canvas with 8 different touch points and 2 decision splits, it's looking at those elements as well. So Troy, what's most exciting about this for your team?
I would say just the benefits may be able to move faster, smarter, but also scale quicker. Our business is always growing. We have a lot of very aggressive goals. So for us, the more that we can scale and execute more efficiently, more accurately, that's the biggest benefit I see.
Awesome. That's great. So the next portion of this, let's actually walk through the agent itself and the agentic workflow. So again, this is just a view of what we built within N8N, again, that automation workflow platform. And there's 4 key areas here that we'll dive into. So number 1 is how that test email works and is sent to that agent inbox. So that's what kicks off the entire process. So once a campaign has been built, that test email will be sent to the inbox that kicks off the entire process. From there, what we're doing is we're integrating to Jira. We're pulling the business requirements document down to analyze it within that agent, and we translate it to plain text for LLM consumption. So a small element there, but what works really well for LLMs is plain text versus a formatted document. So that's what we're doing to make it very easy for the LLM to understand it and the agent ultimately to do what we need it to do. The next row is all of the configuration details. So what's happening here is we're actually pulling the configuration details initially from the brief in Jira, but then we're pulling everything from Braze to make sure that everything was created correctly. So for example, it's identifying the canvas, it's pulling all the components of the canvas, and then it's pulling all the content blocks within messages with the inside of that canvas as well to make sure everything was configured correctly. From there, there's 2 main QA workflow and checks that are happening. Number 1 is the rendering QA. So that's that top line there where we're going through everything like we talked about before, rendering, accessibility, delivery best practices. Next, we're going into configuration QA. So these are the steps and actual setup of the campaign. And again, the 200 plus QA tasks are actually looked at and completed under a minute. And again, the task list is dynamic as well, so it changes anytime based on the campaign or based on the workflow that's specific to Taco Bell at that particular time. The other really cool thing about this is the detail it provides. So out of those 200 plus, maybe there are 3 errors or 3 things that don't pass that QA process. The output back to that test script file is what failed and why specifically it failed. And it's down to the specific detail. So for example, if we didn't include alt text as part of a URL inside of an email, it will say missing alt text. So that way it's very easy for the person who's actually doing the QA to go back, make the adjustment, run the agent again, and be able to deploy the campaign really quickly. So we talked about the hours saved per campaign. So about 2 hours per campaign. Taco Bell's typically sending at least 12 campaigns per week. So again, 25 hours at least saved through this QA agent. Troy, what are the biggest benefits that you and the team have received from this QA agent?
Yeah, as you mentioned, major time savings is one of the biggest benefits. As we start to using this process more, our error rate has definitely decreased. So less chance of errors for the agent to learn, also for the team to understand how to use this as well. And then for the team, it's better upfront requirements. So as the results QA run, give the team more insights where majority of issues usually happens, so that team can make corrections. And we're starting to see less of those in our BRD process, which is the document that the strategy team provides. That helps with that. And I mentioned earlier, just allow us to get faster deployments, get us out the door much quicker, more accurate. Um, and then again, these are not just wins for the team. I think it's wins for our entire business as we scale and be able to execute and communicate better to our customers. So it'll give us more time to free up and do more advanced strategic opportunities as well. So I think it's win on both fronts for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think what's cool to think about too is once we combine these campaign processes together, or these agents, I should say. So, for example, once you take the composition agent for Whataburger and the QA agent, you start to combine these together. So that our next goal is implementing the QA agent from Taco Bell for Whataburger and vice versa, the composition agent for Taco Bell. We can really start to bring down the amount of time it takes to launch these campaigns from start to finish. So we really get a good view of what that ultimately could look like from a 14-day down to 6 to 8 days, and saving a team's ton of time and effort as well. The
Yeah,
other
I would
key
say
thing that,
I would say, Bob, I
oh, go
totally
ahead,
agree.
Troy.
I think I would add to that. Yeah, I totally agree. I think for us working with you and then Whataburger as well, I think that definitely is our roadmap to include the composition agent. I think the value here is be able to associate a bunch of agents together. That way you can have the full AI flow. So that's the advantage of just not using one agent, but combination of agents together.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good point, because the other key thing to think about as well is once you build an agent, then it's one, optimizing that agent moving forward, but then also how can we layer that foundation to build additional agents as well? Just like we all know, marketing is never finished. This kind of agentic workflow and foundation isn't finished either. So what we want to do is set the foundation with that first agent. And that's what we would really highly recommend that you all do, is think about what's the one agent or one thing that you could build to make a process better, then leverage that to then build other agents on top of it. And the first agent will always take the most amount of time, but then the other agents after that will become much more efficient for you to build on top of that foundation. So I'm sure you're all wondering a couple of different things here. One is how long did it take to kind of build these things out? So number one, just sharing with you all, it took 3 team members on our side about 300 hours to build each of these agents. So each agent took about the same amount of time between the QA and the composition agent. How much do these agents cost? Agents can very wide range, and the reason for that is they completely vary in complexity, how they're being leveraged, what we're actually asking them to do. So they can range anywhere from 25 to 250K per agent, just based on the different platforms that we're integrating with, what we're actually asking the agent to do. The other thing to keep in mind as well is the infrastructure and maintenance of that first agent. But once you've got that first agent, you've got a really good foundation to build other ones. What is the ROI? This is always a hard question, right? But it's completely dependent on the use case. But as you can see, for the composition agent with Whataburger, saved them about 25 hours per week, same amount of time on the Taco Bell side. And I think the other element too on the Taco Bell side is just not requiring people to be around late at night, being able to strike more of a work-life balance, not only for the Taco Bell team, but the team at Stitch that they work with as well. So what you can take from this, there are a couple of key things here. One is go through your campaign process, identify opportunities to incorporate AI and automation into your workflows. Again, there is a more high level of upfront, like kind of building that foundation to start. But then once you have that foundation, you can quickly add on additional agents. Also, if you're not leveraging some of the AI components within Braze, start there. Start small. See how it works for you, whether it's intelligent timing or intelligent channel or intelligent selection. There's a lot that comes with every Braze license that you can get a lot from, just to start testing and see how it works out for you before going full blown into an agent. So if we were in your shoes, what we would be doing next are some of the elements that you'll see here on this slide. So first, conduct an end-to-end review and analysis of your campaign process. Identify the biggest pain points or repetitive tasks in that flow. So just like what we saw with Whataburger and Taco Bell, not every single piece of that campaign process is going to be a good candidate for an agent or automation, but the ones that take the longest or the most repetitive typically are. And then start to build a roadmap. So obviously you want to start with one. Don't start with trying to build out 8, right? Just start with a single agent or a single automated workflow. And if you're having trouble thinking through that, at Stitch, we have a complimentary Braze and Martech assessment that we run. And so what we do is we come on site for 3 to 4 hours or do it virtually to run through your entire campaign process in your MarTech stack to figure out if we were in your shoes over the course of the next 12 months, what would we be doing to make this a more automated workflow and to get the most out of your MarTech and out of your Braze platform. Before we jump into Q&A, and if you do have any questions, definitely type them into the chat. But wanted to also announce our Braze Innovation Series. So this is our first webinar as part of that series. You'll see a couple of upcoming dates for December, January, and March. So we're really excited to do that and deep dive into more of these different situations and examples and solutions with our team as well as our clients as well. So if you'd like to register for that, go to bit.ly/Braze Innovation Series. Great. Let's jump into Q&A. First, I'm going to ask Troy a couple of questions, and then we'll open it up based on the questions that have been put in the chat. So first, Troy, what advice would you give other marketers who are curious to adopt AI-driven automation in their organizations?
Yeah, great question. I would say, I think you touched on it a little bit there. Foundation is key. So make sure you have the right foundation. Clean data is essential. I think we dealt with a lot, everyone here maybe dealt with where data is not clean, and I think that raises a lot of issues at the beginning. And then begin with a use case. Make sure you have a very use case in mind that you can tackle. Start small, and then as you learn, you'll start be able to grow and scale the process.
What's like the next thing that you're excited about being optimized by AI in the next 12 months outside of QA?
Well, that competition agent, right? We want to put together. But I think we see opportunities in AI everywhere. It's going to help our team be able to focus more, do more advanced work. So I think we have a lot of stuff in place. Can't really go too much on forward looking at this time, but I think AI is definitely a major component of our roadmap for the next year or so.
What's your go-to order at Taco Bell?
I'm pretty boring. I just like two soft tacos. That's it. So I like the classic stuff. We do have a decade, so it's a little bit shameless plug. We have our decades coming up, so you like everyone like classic items. Definitely go there. Sure.
And if you haven't tried the crispy chicken burrito, I highly recommend it. It's fantastic. Where are humans still the most valuable in your campaign process today?
Yeah, I think our CTO, our CEO said the same thing. I think obviously AI is something we'd want to be in the forefront, leveraging AI, but we see human is still the most valuable component of our organization. So we definitely want to free up space for our team members. I mentioned to focus on more strategic opportunities. Like AI can handle all repetitive stuff, predict patterns, but I think human provides the best context, judgment, and be real with the customers. So that's how we envision human and AI working together.
Mm-hmm. And for those on the call who haven't started implementing AI at all, they're starting from scratch. Where would you recommend they start?
Well, again, I would say identify a use case that's simple that you can tackle, you can measure, make sure you can measure accurately, because I think the key is make sure there's positive return on investment there. And then definitely get cross-functional team involved, because you're gonna need help from all different teams, not just one team. Don't be a silo. And then again, just start learning small, and then as you scale, you'll be able to perfect the process.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Troy. Looks like we've got some questions in the Q&A, which is great. Keep them coming through if you guys have more. We'll start from the top. Is offer fit for offers or messaging only? Troy, actually, since you have so much experience with offer fit, would you mind answering that question of is offer fit for offers or messaging only?
Not really. It depends on if you want to offer fit. Again, it's the AI decision engine. So it's part of Braze now. You can apply other type of campaigns there as well. It's not just for offers. So hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, I think like some of the offer fit is really great for any kind of revenue driving use case. So for example, It could be for a welcome journey or onboarding campaign. It doesn't necessarily have to be specific to an offer. It could just be different types of content, different types of creative, different subject lines, but it just allows you to automate those different types of testing at a much broader scale. Typically, you're able to do anywhere from 50 to 100 different versions for a particular use case. So things like welcome, re-engagement, abandoned cart, taking a next best action, those different things are all really good candidates and use cases for OfferFit.
Yeah, I would just
Uh,
add to my point earlier off it. I think same thing. I think you want to identify a very specific use case because they're gonna
mhm.
the way is you want to identify a KPI. So it could be sign up, could be any type of conversion you're looking for. It doesn't have to be offer, doesn't have to be revenue, it could be something else as well. And then the AI will make the positive learning toward that KPI that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, for sure. The next question from Nicholas, does the agent enable or auto-populate Canvas setup, or does that still have to be manually created? No, the agent does create the Canvas configuration inside of Braze. Next is, what are some of the basic marketing ops or workflow building blocks that you need in place to be able to work with these specific agents? For example, asset naming conventions or metadata. I think what's really cool about both of these agents is that there was no pre-work that we did with Taco Bell or Whataburger to get their data in a specific place or leverage specific naming conventions. Those things are certainly always helpful, right? Anytime you're trying to automate or train someone new on processes, the more that it is organized, the easier it is. But what was really great was, especially with LLMs, that you're able to decipher a lot of those things with AI. So we didn't have to do a lot of that upfront. There wasn't a large amount of upfront work that we had to do before we were able to start solutioning and building these agents. The next question for N8N, who typically owns these workflows or who should? Can our CRM team own it if we're able to skill up? That's a great question. Every organization is much different. Some, the CRM or the marketing team owns them. Others, it's the IT or tech or engineering team that owns them. What I would recommend is identifying someone within your team. It doesn't have to be the marketing or CRM team. It could be someone else in a cross-functional team that's kind of the leader of these agentic workflows or AI in general, specific to marketing. And that's really important, is it has to be someone that's specific to marketing. We've met with a lot of companies who have an AI team or task force, but there's not someone that's dedicated to marketing. And the hard part there is that someone that's working on AI use cases for customer service is not going to understand the main elements or use cases we might have for marketing, and vice versa, right? And so having someone that owns it, as far as like the use case is concerned and the ideation there is important. Who owns N8N at a platform level isn't as important because ultimately anybody who needs access to it can build it out. Next question is, in order to build the agents like shown here, are the Braze agents an add-on required, or is this platform not something else? Yeah, so you do not need to buy anything additional from Braze to build out these types of agents. We use N8N, that workflow automation tool, but you could use Workato, you could use MuleSoft, any workflow automation tool that you have licensed could likely build these similar type of agentic workflows. Kevin asked how many days were saved in your speed to market for Whataburger. About 2 hours per campaign, about 25 hours per week. So about 25 hours per week on average. We've seen, obviously, when there are more campaigns that need to be built out, there's more time saved. So recently, as the campaign volume has come up, we've actually gotten over 40 hours per week that we've saved through that composition agent. Mike, yep, this is being recorded, so we'll share that out with you afterward. Lexi, was there anyone on your team that was nervous about AI taking their jobs, and how did you communicate the benefits to your team members? Troy, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can take that. Happy to take that. Yeah. No one on my team, I can say that 100% doubt is afraid of AI taking our job. I think we're actually love having AI. I think, again, it speeds up our process. All of the mundane, redundant work will go away. It frees up the team to do more advanced strategic opportunities, work. Again, I lead a bunch of solution architects, so we're always looking to solve different solutions. So no one is at least at Taco Bell is definitely afraid of AI replacing us.
Next question is, you touched on a tool Puppeteer uploading content within Braze. Were there security concerns allowing it within Braze, or did you perhaps only limit it to image upload? You're exactly right. You answered your own question. We just basically pared down the permissions for that particular user that Puppeteer was leveraging to only do the tasks that we wanted it to. Next question is, what type of resources are needed to build one of these AI agents? I know we can hire Stitch, but I'm wondering if our engineering team may have the right resources. Yeah, you're exactly right. There's nothing proprietary to how we're building these agents. Anyone who is familiar with how LLMs work, building integrations, especially any kind of API or MCP server integrations, across multiple different platforms. So as you can see for Whataburger, we integrated ClickUp, Figma, and Braze. For Taco Bell, we integrated Jira, Google Docs, Braze, and a couple of other platforms. So as long as you've got some folks on your team that are understanding of how to build these types of integrations and workflows, you can absolutely do it on your own. Typically, those teams or those resources are going to be inside of an engineering or a product team. Martin asked, how are you creating the canvases programmatically? Is this a feature of the Braze MCP? It's not a feature of the Braze MCP. So I think, Martin, probably where your question is coming from is that you can create a canvas through the API based on an existing canvas, but you cannot create a canvas brand new from the API. And so what we did in certain situations where there was already a canvas that was configured that we could leverage, we just made a copy of that canvas because that's available through the API. For the ones where we have to create a new canvas altogether, we're leveraging Puppeteer to create that. Zach's question is, what's your strategy to reduce AI hallucination when using agents? And do you think hallucination risk increases as agents become more autonomous? 100% on the last portion of your question of around hallucination. I think the big thing that we're doing within these agents is that we are giving them very specific instructions and we're giving them a scope of what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. So we certainly had to go through a number of testing and QA and iterations to get them exactly where we wanted them to be. But because we're in a workflow and we're not relying on these agents for things like copywriting or content generation, we're able to really kind of hone in on exactly what we want them to do, even though they're able to go out and make an API call or create an asset through Puppeteer. We're still governing exactly how they do those things. So very specific instructions is how we've kind of made sure that there's not any random hallucinations that would cause it to create something that it shouldn't be able to.
I can also add to that. I think our team at the beginning, we also review a lot of the results. So one of the cool things the workflow Bobby shared was after the workflow, it will generate a file of all the results. So definitely at the beginning, spend the time, review, make sure there is no hallucinations. Continue to do that. But as time comes by, you'll be more confident with the agent. Also, the agent, the way we have guardrails in place, it's not able to schedule anything, deploy anything, right? There's still a lot of guardrails in place that allows make sure our team still has the full control. So
Yeah, that's a great point, especially like kind of what we talked about earlier. Just like marketing, AI is never done right. So as these agents are using an LLM, as you all know, there's different versions of LLMs being uh, created and updated all the time. So that's something we've got to make sure that we're on top of to continuously watch that. Specifically on the QA agent, like Troy mentioned, that's why it's so nice to see the actual output of what's happening and how those things are working so we can prevent those hallucinations. Last question we've got here is, what other Braze enablements would you consider a must-have as we move into utilizing AI as a company? Decisioning Studio was one that was mentioned. What's nice about Braze as a platform, just on the base platform, is that a lot of the AI components, like the copywriting assistant, the intelligent timing, intelligent channel, and intelligent selection, all of those come standard with the Braze platform. I would say as you're looking to go into AI as a company, I would first look at what can be done with the publicly available features through the API as an example. So kind of like more of the process side that we've walked through today. AI Decisioning Studio is a feature that is kind of a tool in and of itself, right? It's a very powerful tool, but it requires a lot of thought and planning and execution to make sure you're using it the right way. So that's one that I would say is kind of more for advanced use cases or advanced companies before But before that, you could definitely jump into other elements of Braze and still leverage AI. Troy, anything you would add there?
Yeah, I agree. I'd say HN2 is definitely very powerful, but you need to make sure you have the right plan going in, and it is a little bit more advanced. You have the right resources to support, but that would be it.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for Troy for doing this with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who joined. We really appreciate it as well. We love this stuff. This is our dream job. So we really appreciate you coming, and we'll share the recording afterward. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.